Hello and welcome to Spirit Touched. We're going to be talking about Counseling 101 because one of the names of Jesus is Counselor. The reason why the world is in the fix it's in is because it keeps on doing its own will instead of the will of God. However, know this: God has a will in all things and it must be served. To do that, our reply should be, then let the will of God be served. Why? Because His hand is not only in everything, it's on everything, and He can be trusted in it. Jesus always did the will of His Father as an example for us to follow. He cautioned us to be in this world, but not of it. That was good advice then, and it's even better now. The more this world denies Jesus, the darker it gets. For the antidote, see Isaiah 51:4. His justice will light our way out of this darkness, and His word will light our path. Psalms 119, 105. Verse 7 of Isaiah 51 tells us to have His teaching in our hearts. Why? Because it's the truth, and that's what sets us free. Sometimes, in order to do the right thing, we need to seek wise counsel. Here's an interesting thought about that. He counsels us with His eyes upon us. Proverbs 8:14. One of the places wisdom comes from is via His counsel. Proverbs 11:14 tells us that without it we will fall and fail. According to Proverbs 19:20, there can be instruction in that counsel. Proverbs 20:18 says, His purpose is established by counsel. We are in a war. One of the places strength can one of the places strength can be on fighting comes from His wise counsel. Solomon had some interesting things to say in Proverbs. Check out chapter 1, verse 20. Starts by saying that wisdom shouts. Keep reading through verse 25. Too many people are closing their eyes to the truth, also known as the facts. Do not do that. For why? Look at verses 31 and 32. Good sense comes from listening to wise counsel. Chapter 2, verse 1. Wisdom is one of God's hidden treasures. If you really want knowledge and understanding, get attached to Jesus. Why? Because those two things guard and protect us. These two things also bring joy. Chapter 3, verses 4 and 8. Then in the same chapter, see verses 13 through 20. Chapter 4:23 strongly reminds us to guard our thoughts. Why? Because they influence everything we do. Verse 26 tells us to watch our steps. Verse 27. Why? So we don't get sidetracked. chapter 8, verse 11 and 12. Wisdom is profitable. Sometimes it's wise to keep your mouth closed. It keeps us from saying things, keeps you from saying things you might regret later. Check out chapter 13, 17, and 20, and chapter 18, 20 tells us wise counsel can be better than a good meal. Now, that's an interesting concept. Remember, when you are standing in a hole, not listening to good counsel just makes the hole even deeper. Another good piece of advice is found in chapter 19, verse 27. Sometimes we may have to do chapter 20, verse 5. When it comes to doing battle, chapter 21:31 is the best advice. You see, the smartest thing we can do is found in chapter 22, 17, 19, and verse 21b. Then check out chapter 24, 13, and 14. According to chapter 28, 26, it's one thing to listen to good advice, but it's another thing to put it into practice. Those two go together. Just call doing so the Jesus two-step. Happy dancing. There's some more wisdom in the New Testament in Philippians 3:18. Everything that comes from Jesus is priceless, and if it doesn't come from him, it's worthless. Our strength and power comes from him alone. We have none of either on our own. There are 7 spirits of the Lord. One of them is the wisdom found in his counsel. Now here's something interesting. According to Isaiah 28:29, even farmers need wise counsel. Then look at Isaiah 46:13 when you are in need of deliverance. You see, God's is the only counsel that stands. Jeremiah 32:19 gets it right. According to Zechariah 6:13, good counsel brings harmony among leaders. Then in the New Testament, there's evil counsel between the Pharisees, which is how Jesus ended up on the cross. John 11:53. I have just barely scratched the surface of this subject. Read Proverbs for yourself. See what nuggets you find to what past to what pastor does even every month, and do what pastor does every month and read 1 chapter a day. Then pray and ask the Holy Spirit to tell you what he has for you in those words. Ask him if there's something you need to learn from them. Then that little book is a good rod a good road maybe to follow for life. Teach it to your children and grands. Our young people need to know what's in that book. Teaching it to them could be your legacy of love to them. Teaching is a form of counseling. It's another way to put your war room to good use. So I'm going to go in the war room and check out some wise counseling. You may send your prayer requests, he answers, TWO at gmail.com.